Open enrollment, also known as the period of time where we seem to ask the same questions about our benefits that were clearly answered in some prior email. So I thought it would be a good idea to ask some questions to our benefits expert, Kevin. And the first question I actually have for you today, Kevin, are you a fan of as per my previous email, or do you actually help people out when they ask the same question every year about their health insurance?
A little bit of both. No, I find that this time of year,
Both.
I honestly, I get a lot of repeat questions from people.
Okay.
And I get a lot of repeat customers, if for lack of a better word. I know the certain individuals that I can count on that Friday before the close of open enrollment, they're going to be blowing up my phone and, hey, I'll look back at my call history and I haven't talked to this person in a year, and here they are. We're about to end their benefit enrollment, and sure enough, they're calling me. So
Yeah, I'm sure there's some repeat offenders there, including myself. And for those who don't know, my name is Michael MacKelvie. I'm a certified financial planner with Mariner Wealth Advisors. I'm joined today by Kevin Ahern, who I mentioned is our benefits specialist. We thought it would be a good idea to have him come on here, so maybe he wouldn't have to field as many questions individually, and he might be able to help us out as far as the changes that are occurring here for 2023, some things to note. And I think this is always just a good chance to reflect on what benefits make sense for you. So we thought Kevin would be a good person to bring on for our podcast here, Your Life Simplified at Mariner Wealth Advisors. So I think maybe a place to start here too, Kevin, more seriously, I guess. The HSA, FSA, HRA arena. I know we could have an entire episode about HSA, but I mean, as we're looking at the differences between these three, I've found that very few people understand the differences. And since we seem to mix them all up, a lot of times people confuse HSA with FSA as far as how it works. Would you maybe break down some of the key differences between the three for us?
yeah, absolutely. And before I do, I want to take just a quick step back just to define what each of those plans is. So HSA stands for Health Savings Account. FSA stands for Flexible Spending Account, and HRA stands for Health Reimbursement Arrangement. So there's a lot of jargon and acronyms in the medical insurance world. So just making sure we're all on the same page on as to what
Helpful.
each means. So an HSA, it really provides the consumer the most flexibility because an HSA is their individual account. Now, the key aspect of an HSA is it has to be tied to a medical plan that is considered a high deductible health plan. So that means, just very simple terms, that your first dollar expense on that type of medical plan is higher than what you would see in a more traditional medical
On a
sense.
monthly basis. Yeah.
Yep. So now with an HSA plan itself, the premiums, or the amount you pay for that insurance coverage, is typically lower than your premiums on other plans. So you have that medical plan, and it's paired with this really tax-favored health savings account. So there's really three main tax advantages with an HSA. The first tax advantage comes into play with your contributions. So any contribution that you make, you can actually make tax-free. And you can do that through a payroll contribution. So it lowers your tax liability on a per paycheck basis.
Mm-hmm.
You can also do that via a lump sum amount. And there's a number of HSA account providers, and all of these providers have online resources, online websites where you can just fund an HSA account basically from your bank account.
Mm-hmm.
Any lump sum contribution that you make can be written off as an above the line tax deduction when you're filing your taxes at the end of the year.
But in order to do that, you have to have a high deductible plan, correct?
Yes.
If you set it up on your own, invest the monies on your own, which again, I don't think a lot of people know they can do that. But you would need to have a high deductible plan that you could do that with. That is
Yep.
right, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And so a lot of times you can get that through your employer. Your employer, if they offer a high deductible health plan. If you are self-insured, there's a lot of ACA compliant plans that the government offers that are considered high deductible health plans, where then you can go and select your own HSA vendor.
Right.
Um, and so it's really nice benefit. It's all tax free, and a couple of things about the contribution itself. You can actually make changes to that contribution at any point in the year. So it does provide you with a lot of flexibility as to how you're saving your money throughout the year. So if your
Right.
medical needs change, if they're a little bit different than you thought they were going to be when you go into the year, you can account for that with your HSA contribution.
Hmm. Right.
The other awesome thing about an HSA contribution is you can actually make contributions to that HSA account through tax deadline of the following year. So
Similar to
let's
an IRA.
yep, exactly. So let's say you have an HSA account in 2022, you're working with your CPA to file your taxes in 2023, comes up, you owe Uncle Sam a little bit more than you thought you were going to. Hey, I had an HSA account. I didn't hit the maximum on that account. Let me go and make a contribution to that account so I can lower that tax liability fund for future healthcare related
So
expenses.
I think there's a couple things there. So maybe a company that doesn't have an HSA as a part of their benefit, but has a high deductible plan, somebody can get that high deductible plan and then go set up the HSA on their own. Again, I think that's an important characteristic, important distinguishing point there, because I've noticed that, there definitely are employers that don't have HSAs, but they have high deductible plans. So they
Yes.
could go out and just open up their own HSA on their own through some, Fidelity, for example, is like, I think, where I had mine, not to plug them.
Mhm.
Free advertising, there you go. But yeah, that would be, one option for somebody. Now, the HRA, can you break that down for us real quick?
Yes, yes. So the HRA is really an account that's owned by the employer. So the associate or the employee doesn't technically own that account. Now, the nice thing about the HRA is if an employer has an HRA, then they are more than likely going to be making contributions to that account.
Right.
So there's going to be a defined contribution with an HRA. Again, you see premiums or the amount you pay as the employee typically lower in an HRA because you also receive that company contribution, but the big key factor with an HRA is it's not your account. So
Hmm.
if you leave the medical plan, if you're terminated or you find another job or if you switch medical plans, go to your spouse's plan, those funds they don't go with you.
Yeah.
So which is different than an HSA because on an
Right.
HSA that's your personal account.
Right. So that's where HSA would maybe be more optimal if, the employer's not funding it for you, which, if they're doing an HRA and they're not funding it for you, then it kind of defeats the purpose of really having one because
Right.
it's more restricted.
Yep.
I I guess why would companies even, this is something I don't know, why would companies even do an HRA then versus an HSA?
Honestly, it's HRAs are a lot older. They're
Okay.
actually becoming less and less popular. We're seeing a
Okay.
lot more employers utilize the HSA and just
Right.
making it and still do an employer contribution to that HSA.
Yeah.
HSAs honestly are typically a win-win for both the associate and the employer.
That's why I was
Um,
wondering if the HRA was even still around. It's maybe it's kind of like a Coverdell ESA for education planning. It's kind of still there, but in comparison to 529, it's just really not that attractive, other than very rare circumstances. So, okay, that makes
yep.
sense. And then FSA, the
Mhm.
key difference point here, at least that I know of, you got to use the funds within the calendar year, correct?
Yes. Yep. Yep. The FSA, I always refer to an FSA as use it or lose it. So
Right.
technically, there are two different ways plans can be administered on a medical FSA. And I want to make a key distinction because there's really a multitude of different FSAs. We're talking about a true medical FSA. So we're not talking about a
Right.
dependent care FSA where you can utilize funds to pay for childcare, daycare, stuff like that. This is a true medical FSA. You use this on medical expenses.
Hmm.
With that medical FSA, there's two ways plans can be administered. One is by a grace period. So essentially, once you reach the end of the plan year, you have your entire balance rolls over and you have 2.5 months to utilize any funds remaining in that account.
Hmm.
After that 2.5 month period, those funds are subject to forfeiture. So you lose
Okay.
access to those funds. So if you set aside $1,000 in that FSA, you didn't use it for that whole plan year during that grace period, you lose access to that $1,000.
Okay. Makes
The
sense.
other the other way plans can be administered is with a carryover. So essentially, plan year hits, and the most typical plan year is a calendar year. So I'll use
Right.
12/31 just to make it easy. So 12/31 hits, you have a balance in your FSA. If you utilize the carryover limit, there's an IRS regulated limit that you can only carry over. So for instance, for 2022, that limit is $570.
Important to
So
know.
yep, yep. So the nice thing about the carryover is you can utilize the funds all the way through the end of the year. But again, if you had anything higher than $570, you would lose access to that on 12/30 on one
So I
one.
have the same question on FSA versus HSA as I did with HRA. Like, why would a company even use an FSA? Because in every single way, it seems like it's less attractive than an HSA. Primarily, again, portability and the ability to just roll over the HSA to new years, and you can use it down the road as a retirement vessel. I mean, why are companies even using FSAs anymore then?
Yeah, two big reasons. The first one is with the funds availability. So with an
Okay.
FSA, your entire election is actually available on your first effective date of benefits. So
Okay.
if you enroll in $1,000 worth of the FSA, that full $1,000 can be utilized day one. So
Okay.
again, go back to our example. We're talking about open enrollment. Again, most plans start on January 1st. So that means that a full $1,000 is available on January 1st.
January 1st. Okay.
Yep. The other benefit is an FSA, it doesn't necessarily have to be tied to a medical plan. So with the HSA, you have to utilize that high deductible health medical plan. It has to be paired with that. With the medical FSA, you can utilize that account with a more traditional healthcare plan. So a plan
That's
that
a
has
key distinguishing point there.
mhm,
Okay.
mhm,
So
yeah,
for maybe a lower deductible
yep,
plan when and
yep,
we'll get into strategies here in a second. Maybe you have a low deductible plan year where you want to bunch some surgeries or something like that
mhm,
within the year. Okay, that makes sense.
yep,
Thank you for differentiating. You did a wonderful job there.
yeah.
Next question that I have for you: are there any major changes in the benefits space? And I'm speaking largely not just for our company at Mariner, but largely speaking that people are going to have questions about for this upcoming open enrollment season.
Um, y- y- yes and no. I feel like there's always new things that are coming into the marketplace. Um, a lot of a lot of popular items that I am seeing personally is you have your core healthcare, medical, dental, vision. Those are pretty standard across the board. A lot of employers though are looking at different recruitment tools as we go through the Great Resignation. How do we attract talent? How do we bring people in? So there's a lot more of what I refer to as your soft benefits that are now
Mhm.
being offered. So
Okay.
this includes flexible work arrangements, so work from home. This includes options like pet insurance. This is actually one of the most popular insurances that I'm seeing across the marketplace. Is people want to insure their pet, and so
Right.
they're part of the family too. So why not offer pet insurance?
Yeah.
Um, Telemedicine is tremendously popular. It is skyrocketed in popularity across
I use it all
employers.
the time.
Yeah, it's so convenient. And as we were all working from home or trying to quarantine, isolate, nobody wanted to go to the doctor. And so what
Yeah.
became really, really popular? Telemedicine. I think in the
Yeah.
last 3 years, I think I read somewhere recently that over 90% of employers are now offering some type of telemedicine service.
Yeah. I
And
can understand why. I mean, just the ease of use is so helpful.
oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. You literally have access to a doctor 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So
Okay.
most of the time, these providers, they have apps where you can literally go in, pull down from a menu of items why you're wanting to talk to a doctor, and then you can be talking with a doctor within as little as 10 minutes.
Right. But no real major changes. Sounds like maybe just kind of those flex benefits, that are very much per company that you'd want to check into.
Yeah, no,
Um,
I mean, honestly, the newest thing from a major benefit overhaul perspective has been the introduction of the HSA, and that was way
okay.
back in 2003. Everything else is pretty standard across the board,
Makes sense.
from looking at an overall benefit landscape.
Okay. Now, next question I have just for you. Um, what are some health planning strategies to think through as we are looking at open enrollment? I touched on just one there as far as, if you maybe have some surgeries you've been thinking about, x-rays, MRIs that you didn't want to pay for when you're on a high deductible plan, you might want to bunch those into 1 year. But I guess what are some strategies to think through here as we're getting to the open enrollment season?
Yeah, yeah. The biggest one I always tell our associate population is healthcare utilization. How often do you utilize the actual healthcare plan? This is really going to be what defines which plan is appropriate for you. The last thing anybody wants to do is pay more for something that they don't utilize. So, if you don't utilize a medical plan at all, then why are you paying onto a Cadillac healthcare plan? Maybe look
Right.
at a lower premium option. Again, in any type of financial analysis, you want to start with your fixed cost. So start with the cost of, hey, this is what it takes just to be enrolled in the benefit itself. Start there and then work your way up. So, if you don't utilize the healthcare plan at all, then select the one with the lowest premium. If you do utilize the healthcare plan, stuff to think about is, are you going to specialists? Those usually have higher costs because that is more for your acute care. So your chiropractors, your allergists, your orthopedic surgeons, your physical therapists, those are all, what we consider specialists. And those have higher cost than your primary care physician.
Right.
And and that kind of leads me into, something else to think about is site of care. Site of care it can vary very dramatically when looking at healthcare expenses. I've talked with people that have been looking at getting an MRI, and they might look at one hospital or doctor's office and it has one cost. And then they look at like a diagnostic imaging service that specializes in MRIs. And the cost there is so much less than they would have
Interesting.
found at the provider and hospital. So if you
Yeah.
know you are going to have an upcoming healthcare expense, do a little bit of homework just to see if you can get, what you're going to be paying. And I mean, you will find providers that are literally right down the street from each other and could
Right.
have
It's so
thousands of
interesting.
dollars worth of varying costs. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's
crazy.
that's so interesting. You assume, the medical profession is very similar to like how you assume somebody's a doctor. They kind of have this umbrella of just being at a certain level. And I have a tendency to think, okay, that doctor and this doctor, they're both doctors. They're similar. They're the same, right? They're maybe just as good as one another. We definitely know that's not the case. The same can be said for just medical costs, both for ourselves, but pets as well.
Hmm.
My parents' dog, who was my dog for a short period of time before I moved out, um, we had just a surgery, and the first number came back, it was massive. We scoped it out with another vet, and it was like one third the cost. I mean, it was a huge discrepancy. So yeah, I think that's a great point. In something again that I think many people overlook or just don't know
Yeah.
about.
Right, right. And any type of elective surgery, something that you're going in, any type of scope or something like that, I would always highly recommend just getting onto your provider's website. Most providers have tools where you can look up cost of certain procedures. You can look up quality of the provider that you're going to. Just like everything in life, I feel like now is reviewed. Even doctors, hospitals, facilities, there are reviews on those websites, on those doctors.
To check out.
Yeah, a lot of companies now are offering, how much, what quality of care was given through this provider. So, and most of the time, what I've seen is doctors that are considered, in network with a particular insurance company, they can provide, if not better, just as good of care as providers that are not considered in network.
Okay. And I think that leads into the next question on just the difference between, it seems like a question that comes up every year, I'm sure, as you're well aware, PPO, HDHP, and HMO. What are
Yep.
the differences there?
Yep. Yep. Very, very, very common question. So PPO stands for Preferred Provider Organization. And for some reason, and I have no idea why, but it feels like a lot of the insurance companies are moving away from utilizing the term PPO. I don't know why. It's a very common, in my mind, it's a very common term. I feel like people know what a PPO is. It's a network of doctors that provide you discounted rates, discounted services by utilizing that network. So when we refer to PPO or HMO, we're referring to the network of providers.
Hmm.
So a PPO is just a broad network. With most PPO plans, you are able to go to any provider, go to any doctor, go to any hospital that you want to. The provider themselves would just be classified as in network versus out of network. And on
Right.
any health insurance plan, the single best way to keep your healthcare costs down is by going to in-network providers.
Right. Right. That's the major difference there.
Yep.
Now, uh, one of the, I would say, just final questions I have for today. What are some of the free items we can take advantage of that maybe you see people miss? And one of those free items that comes to mind, life insurance.
Mhm.
I mean, does that really matter if we're not going to be around to enjoy the benefit?
Yes, because you're going to be leaving somebody some of the benefits. So yeah, on
Okay.
life insurance plans, it's if
So
you have.
there's other reasons to have it.
Yes, yeah, yeah, no, definitely. You don't want to leave, your spouse, your kids, your parents with, having to
Okay.
hold the bag when you go down, for lack
Okay.
of a better word. And,
That makes
Um,
sense.
yeah, I know you and I are laughing about it, but it is a very serious or
It
thing to think
is. I
about
mean, it
because.
is. But after having sat through hundreds of meetings, where I'm sitting in front of folks, and you ask them questions around life insurance, and I don't, there tends to be a certain type of person that maybe just thinks that there's just absolutely no need to that, even
Right,
if they don't have enough money to really be self-insured. And so I think
right.
maybe the laugh there is because there's a little bit of truth in it.
Oh, 100%, 100%. No, I meet with our associates all the time, and we talk about life insurance, and I always preface it with, I'm sorry to get so morbid here, but this is
Right.
this is what happens. Here's your
Yeah.
payout amount, should something happen to you. But
Yeah, and
no.
I think on that too, it's, a key distinguishing point, it's taxable. The benefit would be taxable
Mhm,
if it's a
mhm,
group benefit. Um, but there's free options through work. And, I think one thing to maybe consider is, getting a term policy, take a look at locking something in, because if you're buying up group insurance, that's going to go up as you age.
mhm,
So
mhm.
either every year or every 4 or 5 years as you get into the new bands. And so it can actually be more cost effective, especially if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, even 50s sometimes, to look at like a 10 or a 20-year term, maybe 30-year term if you're younger, just to keep costs down. And with disability, that's taxable as well, to the benefit, right? If you were to, let's say, sign up for disability insurance, which might be another freebie that's there.
It could be. There's a number of plans, with regards to disability, that if certain premiums are taxed, that the actual payout would not be taxed. So,
Right.
common strategy, that
Easy
that
way to
employers.
remember it.
Yeah, yeah, common strategy that people, most of the time, if the associate is paying for the disability insurance, then the payout, that's going to be an after tax payment. So the disability coverage, the payment they receive when they go on disability, is going to be tax free. Now, a lot of employers, as again, part of going back to that recruitment package, they will offer disability insurance to their associates. And a lot of times these are not pre-tax. So
Right.
you would be assessed taxes at the time of your disability payment.
If you were to get that benefit. But I think,
Mhm.
in a lot of ways, disability is more overlooked than life insurance. Um, and, you think about like what's likely to be a
Mhm.
higher likelihood of a claim, at least during the period of time that you're covered. Disability would be that type of insurance. And you also think like what's a bigger liability, losing your income and adding on a bunch of expenses if you were to get sick, which most disabilities are some form of sickness. It's not like getting hit by a car, which we
Right.
tend to think
Right.
of as the physical disabilities that happen by way of injury versus most of the time this is sickness. A lot of times those sicknesses are like completely out of our control.
Mhm.
We can
Mhm.
be healthy, but there's only so much we can do. So I think that's definitely one, to take advantage of what the company is offering you,
Mhm.
but then
Mhm.
maybe look to supplement it through some type of private policy outside of that that can stay with you, that's portable, and as you age, doesn't get more expensive maybe, but just
Yeah.
something to consider there, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%. And a lot of times with disability plans, you're only replacing a portion of your income. So it could be, 40, 50, 60%, up to 80% of your
Right.
income. And so if you're somebody that's like, hey, if I were to be injured in an off the job accident and I was to be miss work for any reason or, be diagnosed with cancer and have to miss work for any period of time and my family relies on that income, then supplementing that group policy with an individual policy
Very
is
important.
definitely a good strategy.
Very
Um,
important. Yeah.
and
Especially if you
most
don't have the money to back it up. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. And honestly, most of the accidents that occur that people go out on disability for occur off the job. And so
Right.
there's not any worker, like when you're on the job, you have workers' compensation insurance that protects you.
Right.
But if you get hurt, playing basketball, chasing your kids around, something like that, there's not a lot of protection for
Not
that
much there.
other than through disability.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's ONOC and any occupation. So,
Yep. Yep.
well, this was helpful. Hopefully, we covered some questions you won't have to answer via email now. Um, Again, my name is Michael MacKelvie. I was joined by Kevin Ahern today to discuss benefits here with Mariner Wealth Advisors. This is Your Life Simplified. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you're listening on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you might be listening, to get more industry insights from industry professionals here at Mariner Wealth Advisors. Thanks again, Kevin, and you guys take care.
Mariner Wealth Advisors, or MWA, is an SEC-registered investment advisor with its principal place of business in the state of Kansas. Registration of an investment advisor does not imply a certain level of skill or training. MWA is in compliance with the current notice filing requirements imposed upon registered investment advisors by those states in which MWA maintains clients. MWA may only transact business in those states in which it is notice filed or qualifies for an exemption or exclusion from notice filing requirements. Any subsequent direct communication by MWA with a prospective client shall be conducted by a representative that is either registered or qualifies for an exemption or exclusion from registration in the state where the prospective client resides. For additional information about MWA, including fees and services, please contact MWA or refer to the Investment Advisor Public Disclosure website at www.advisorinfo.sec.gov. Please read the disclosure statement carefully before you invest or send money. The views expressed in this podcast is for educational purposes only and do not take into account any individual personal, financial, legal, or tax considerations. As such, the information contained herein is not intended to be personal, legal, investment, or tax advice. Nothing herein should be relied upon as such, and there is no guarantee that any claims made will come to pass. The opinions are based on information and sources of information deemed to be reliable, but Mariner Wealth Advisors does not warrant the accuracy of the information. Asset allocation diversification is a strategy designed to manage risk, but it cannot ensure a profit or protect against a loss in a declining market. Certified Financial Planner, trademark, CFP, registered trademark, and federally registered CFP with flame design marks, collectively the CFP registered marks, are professional certification marks granted in the United States by Certified Financial Planner Board of Standards, Inc., also CFP Board. The CFP registered trademark certification is a voluntary certification. No federal or state law or regulation requires financial planners to hold the CFP certification.